Welcome back, everybody, to our continuing coverage of MUFON Symposium 2022 here in Denver, Colorado. Chris Jordan here with The Curious Realm. We are here with author and researcher Keith Seland. Welcome to the show, Keith.
Thank you, Chris.
Tell us a little bit about the Humaniverse Guide and this series of books and all of your research.
Okay, well, the Humaniverse Guide was my own creation. Basically, I took the words humans and universe and merged them into one.
All right.
To create the Humaniverse platform, which is educational by nature, and things to do with the state and future of humankind as a species in relation to our cosmic destiny.
Yeah, and as many people in the community put it, the cosmic brotherhood, because we as humanity, it's interesting, our conversation at your booth yesterday, we're very tribal in nature. It's very hard for us sometimes to break out of the bounds of the comfortable zone, to actively understand somebody else, to be able to empathize with what somebody else believes, and literally be able to just leave it at what somebody believes. You don't have to convince them of a paradigm, anything like that, but understanding the fact that there are shared truths between what you believe and what I believe. And having that common ground, like you're saying, to be able to lift humanity up as a whole, because until we get to that point as a humanity, are we ready for the cosmic brotherhood? Are we ready and prepared as a humanity to join that and to move on to the next phase?
Well, I believe that we have what's been bestowed upon us as a species is one humongous gift, the intelligence with which to drive a course to our ultimate cosmic destinies, as opposed to any other life forms, here on planet Earth. So I suppose in a geologic course of time, our existence as a species on this planet is very, very, very short.
Yeah.
And even much shorter yet is our evolution from hunter-gatherers to where we are today is even a much shorter time. So my contention is that it may be at least a little bit questionable that we are ready to make that step into the cosmic realm. We certainly don't have any sense of a species perspective on much of anything. And concomitant with that is that we don't have a cosmic perspective. And because it's been such a short time since we have evolved from hunter-gatherers, and this is what I'm about to say is a question for me too that's unresolved, is that is our nature hardwired genetically somehow, or is that some of that still present to where we've built our society today the way it is, and it seems in a lot of big ways not to be much different from that of hunter-gatherers. So that's where the wild card being our intelligence.
Yeah.
And our potential with that to be able to drive past or to turn on the different road that will then allow us to create and develop a cosmic consciousness, raise what a concept that I call our human condition, to raise that enough and evolve it enough to where then we can begin to adopt a cosmic consciousness and chart our future course, which is our destiny.
Well, which once again, like you're saying, it really does take an operable knowledge of humanity as a whole, and getting rid of those boundaries between the us and them mentality, and looking at it as more of a we. And what are we doing? Not what are they doing, but what are we as a whole doing to further ourselves? And the second book, right? the better reasoning and decision making?
That's my that
Or
was
is
my
it the
first. That was my first.
Okay,
yes.
because our conversation yesterday was a lot about disseminating information and the mass amount of information that's put out there, and how to actually filter that. And I think that's what you're saying. That's where our intelligence as a species comes in. Is how do we filter this information that we are provided? The whole theme behind this year's MUFON Symposium is UFOs, UAPs, and the media. And even whenever you look at modern media, it doesn't really matter which major network you follow or which major newspaper you follow. The real question is, how do you go about reading opposing opinions? Do you treat those facts as just datum, or do you treat them passionately when they come across your platform of mentality? You know, because it's to find out what somebody else believes or another angle or another point of view. Should, in theory, increase your scope of knowledge and increase your filter.
Sure.
It doesn't necessarily seem to be that way. It seems like a lot of people operate nowadays within a realm of almost confirmation bias, where they are literally looking for something either to confirm what they believe or an opportunity to convince somebody else of what they believe.
And that's a very bad confirmation bias. Is just one example of many fallacious paths that can be taken in a particular situation. And I talk about in my first book, it was actually an expanded version of my graduate thesis. The thesis part of it, the academic part of it, is history development of the scientific methodology. The big portion of it afterwards, the reference part, is write-ups of many UFO cases in history, which comes into, and I do talk about the media and ufology as the theme of the MUFON conference here. But back to the reasoning and decision-making aspect of it, I chose the scientific methodology, which is just one of many different ways of thinking. Humans, our species, I believe, are at least partially hardwired to, we all think a certain way. And I believe that hasn't changed much since the times of our ancients. Native America, back Native Europe, whatever, and partly because of our hardwiring and our genetic evolution and whatnot.
Sure.
We haven't. That general level hasn't changed. But then when you get into a particular job, career function for an individual, well, if you go into the sciences, then you've got the science methodology. If you go into the law, you've got the legal, the business, the social, political, the artistic, and whatnot. Those are all more nuanced aspects of reasoning, decision making, critical
modalities
thinking
that we live through.
That's right. So, along those lines, I presented the scientific methodology as a way to help people curate in their everyday activities. Decisions, questions come up all the time in a person's daily life. And to be able to have this methodology is what I call a toolkit.
Sure.
To attack it like a science researcher would. And in that way, you're trying to eliminate as much bias, for example, confirmation bias, and try to avoid as many of the logical fallacies that could be presented in either an argument or a hypothesis, analysis, experimentation type of a thing. So you're trying to eliminate as much of that as possible. And again, you choose the critical thinking, choose the scientific method, choose the legal method, whatever. They have their own nuances and work well sometimes within their own parameters. But the whole takeaway point is that you're trying to eliminate these biases as much as possible.
Yeah.
Throughout your decision making and everything, and you're organizing your thoughts and your experiments better. So.
Well, yeah, and especially whenever you're talking in the realm of UFO, UAP research, paranormal research, things like that. Like I used to work with a paranormal group probably about 20 years ago now, before it was the hip popular thing to do. And it's funny to me, the sensationalism behind a lot of the paranormal investigation now. For instance, we would never look at photography while on site. We would never go back and listen for an EVP while on site. That is an adrenalized moment, and you are actively searching for something. So the fact that you might misinterpret some footage in the moment because you're caught up in that mentality and modality is pretty great. So when you watch a paranormal show and you see them like rewinding and listening to stuff on site, like that's not what an actual investigation would do. You would be gathering data for 12 hours and then taking that offsite and examining it in a much more scientific way than in a passionate way. Right now, what did we just hear? What did we just get? You would keep moving forward. It wouldn't be the fact of you walking around trying to poke a ghost and see what happens. You're trying to actively gather data on what happens naturally. So
yes,
and that's just it. You know, trying to gather it in the most scientific way, not in the most passionate way. You know, and to subtract your passion from what's happening, because your passion may actually be blinding you from the fact.
Yes, and that's unfortunately a built-in bias
Absolutely.
with our species. Every profession, the scientific community, the legal community, all the groups that we belong to, there's going to be a built-in social bias. The group dynamics, the group politics, and everything to be considered. So, well, this is where our intelligence comes in, to recognize that and to be able to minimize it. We can't have our community of just robots that might be able to eliminate all those things.
So, well, we do have a community of that, and we can see how well it actually does when algorithms start just chopping things off.
It might become AI. It might become AI.
Well, and that's just it. And that's another danger that we have to look at when we're looking at how we cull information, how we filter information. Is the information that you're getting being filtered before it even gets to you?
Yeah,
you know,
and that's been a problem from that has been presented to us in our society now over the last couple generations. Just the amount of information. I believe the concept is called digital literacy. With so much information coming at us at so fast a pace.
That's it.
There's, to take from a communications, a linguistics concept, there's white noise, yellow noise, all different types of noises. If you're presented with all this information at a faster pace, faster and faster than ever before, there's not enough, whether it's our biological sensory stimulations, or if you want to take other parameters, we don't have enough to be able to absorb all of that information. But you have to also recognize that information, again, white noise, yellow noise, is the information that's presented in front of you.
That's right.
Actually legitimate, correct, truthful. And that's a huge problem with the digital literacy campaign. I've done some research before in the past. Worked with Stanford University. They did a huge study on digital literacy. And the biases that come from that, this phenomenon is not attributable to one particular demographic. It's across the board of our humankind.
Exactly.
We don't know how to adopt and most effectively work through conclusions with the digital modalities that we're presented with.
And the prime example is somebody who studied to be an educator at one point in my life. The idea that especially that you're talking about literacy. I don't know if any of y'all out there remember, but you may have been given like reading competency tests in elementary school, junior high. Is normally in benchmark years like 7th grade, 9th grade, things like that. And basically what it is, yeah, it's a time test, and they are going to see how far down the material you got in this 5-minute span. And in that 5-minute span, how much of it you were able to comprehend and how much of it you were able to retain. You know?
Yep.
And that may be a 2-page article that they give you in 5 minutes. How much of it did you get read? To what paragraph did you get? Number 8. And then they'll ask you questions. What happened? What happened at this point? What happened at that point? And I remember at one point, it was like I was reading on a 10th grade level, but I was comprehending on a 12th grade level because I actively would go back and reread what I just read. So it took me twice as long to read something, but I retained more of it because I was reading it and rereading it and making sure that my brain, wait, did I actively get that? And once again, to go back to the concept of filtering information, because like you're saying, that we are washed with data now. It's not like it is when I was a kid, where I would go to the library on a Saturday and check out 3 or 4 books and bring them home for a month, things like that. The library is literally in your hand. You have more data in your hand than the Library of Congress has. Literally.
Yeah,
you have more
so
access to data than we have ever had in the history of humanity. And what that does is literally you've got little elves sitting there next to the information sieve, and the more elves you add throwing dirt into the sieve, sieves can clog. Though they filter and sort things and everything else, if you put too much in there at one time, it can clog up. And the same thing can happen to your brain. The same thing can happen to being able to critically think and push information out. And not everybody is able to, like you're saying, take in that swath of data and push something out and critically think their way through 85 articles that are telling them this.
And to block out the white noise and the yellow noise, so to speak, it's
purposefully there.
Yeah, it's
sadly
it's well been popularly studied in the psychology that on the point of retaining information, that somebody can only retain up to 10% of what they read. So if you read it through a couple of times, well, then your retention level does go up a little bit. So now picture a situation where you've got all from multimedia, you've got all this sensory stimulation coming in, this information, and just a certain period of time with which to interpret, run through a science methodology or whatever methodology you want to use to analyze it, and then come to some conclusion and decide, well, is this truthful information? Is it accurate, correct? Or, well, I got to go back to the start and do the same thing all over again. So it's just so much information coming at us, and our anatomy really hasn't changed much to where we can then, be able to absorb more. And I think that gets into the area, going back to the Stanford studies that were being done with digital literacy and whatnot. People were tested, young students, older people, all across all demographics. They could not recognize an internet advertisement from an internet informational article. And that's that problem's only getting worse.
It's because we've literally got, there's all kinds of, Jeeves is a prime example. Like I run a podcast called Talking Sound, and it is all about audio video industry, equipment, things like that. I could quite literally order Jeeves and tell Jeeves, these are the topics that I talk about, these are the companies that I talk about, and Jeeves will literally cull information from the internet and intelligently write an article about that topic. And
we have that capability,
and it's pretty hard sometimes. Like even to go through and listen to talk radio, whenever they play and whenever they talk about an article, sometimes you'll hear them play a report. And if you're really good, I can notice it because I'm an audio engineer. But if you're really good, you can notice that there is an algorithm reading that report. It is not a human being that's giving you that report from Australia. It's a bot that's reading that, and almost with human inflection. Like it is getting harder and harder to tell the difference between that.
That's exactly
so,
right.
yeah, in our world of deep fake right now, where quite literally I could map myself and have like former President Barack Obama doing this interview live right now.
Yep.
Like he could be taking your place, and Barack Obama could be saying these things.
But we are the live people here.
we are. And that's just it, though. We are up against that technology. So being able to filter that out, knowing that some of the population may know about it, but do they know what it looks like? Do they know how to filter that? And with this great leap of information comes a great leap of accountability on us as people to be able to filter this information, to be able to get rid of our biases and come together for the capital T truth. Because there's the capital T universal truth that's out there according to Plato and things like that. There is a perfect table. We will always make a flawed table because we're human. The question is, how close to the perfect table can we get?
It's like, picture it as a dartboard, so to speak. And with the science methodology and now the way that we practice it in the West, there's other parts of humankind, the Eastern also, that present a little bit of different. But our Western philosophy, where the science methodology as we know it was developed, whatnot, we're, how will I put this? Science is not, in relation to the dartboard, science does not take a particular question, and it cannot provide the ultimate, omnipresent answer. Well, through the experimentation, the process and a hypothesis eventually becomes a theory, which becomes a law, but that law will ultimately be changed also.
Exactly, and that is precisely one of the points that we bring up on this show, probably every single episode, Keith, is the fact that, and we've heard it echoed, and I do not care where you politically stand about the ailment that has ailed humanity over the last 2 years and has spread like wildfire. The fact is there is science there, and what we don't understand is the fact that science changes. By nature, science has to change. Science cannot be static. If it's static, then it's dogma and it's doctrine.
Right.
And it can't be. By definition, it has to move. By definition, it has to be challenged. By definition, we have to explore the 5%. We have to. Yep. That is science. Yep. That's kind of like saying that we can remove choice in America. No, you can't. By definition, America is choice. Yep. Doesn't matter if you agree with that choice or not. The choice has to be there.
And how science is practiced goes back to your point about argumentation.
Yeah.
And
we are dangerously close to a religion of science right now. Dangerously close.
Yeah.
Where people just say, science says this. Well, you know what's funny? I have my high school astronomy book that my teacher literally gave me because of my straight A. It has Pluto as a planet. My son's chart of planets does not.
Yeah.
It does not have Pluto. So that changed, like, in my lifetime.
Yeah, and it's and
that's science.
My opinion, right? Exactly, Chris. And my opinion is that Pluto thing is going to change again because
it's already changing.
Yeah,
they're already coming back and saying, well, no, not really a planetesimal, really closer to a planet. Like already. But it's boomerang.
But that's the whole process. Going back to the dartboards, you've got this big field of board, so to speak. And you maybe can picture it if you want to take the bullseye out of it and leave the board where it is. That's how science, and that's basically how knowledge and the advancement of our society and our human condition happens. Is that even within science practices, new after experimentation and replication and whatnot, the process allows other people to do their own experiments, and they may come up with different findings. Well, same thing, aligning that with arguing a certain point or whatever. It's not, yes, I totally agree that it's come to the point where we're so extreme that if one doesn't agree with the other ones, then they get a gun.
That's exactly the conversation that we were having with Peter Robbins a while ago, is the fact that we have gotten to a point in society where people do not want to have the conversation anymore. And dude, we've got to have the conversation, man. We've got to be willing to have the conversation. If we weren't willing to have the conversation in the 1500s, Magellan would have literally never gone around the world. The world would still be flat.
Yep. And we would.
And that was conspiracy theory, man. Up until that point, if you said the world was round, you were excommunicated, you were burned at the stake, you were driven out of your village. It was witchery to say otherwise. To say that the sun was the center of the universe and not the earth. These were all things that were anathema to humanity at one point to say. There were some cultures that thought differently, of course. You know, Plato thought that the world was round. Ancient Greece thought that the world was round. The rest of the world didn't. You'd literally fly off the edge if you sailed too far, until Magellan tried it. So we got to have Magellans. We got to have that 20% that is willing to look at the 5%. And to take your bullseye analogy in the dartboard even further, a bullseye might be harder to hit, but a triple 20 is worth more. A bullseye is not the most valuable spot on the target. The triple 20 is
hard. And I actually at a tavern, I actually won a beer from a friend of mine where I needed to hit 320s.
Yeah.
And I hit 320s, and he just threw up his hands in the whole bit.
I used to play a lot of darts, and it used to tick people off that I would just sit there and wreck the 20 on cricket all night while they hadn't closed it out.
Everybody has a night of good luck. That's all it is.
But that's the thing. It's are you so myopic that you think that this is the only answer?
Right. And that's how
And unfortunately science gets that way. They get to the point. A prime example would be Bigfoot. I've done a few Bigfoot conferences here lately, and the example that I give people, because of course the answer that most people have is, well, if it exists, we'd have found it. Like, we've developed most of America. I challenge you to go look at the most recent nighttime image of the United States from the ISS. You will notice that 3/4 of the United States is dark. That means nobody lives there. And oddly enough, that place where it's dark is where most of those sightings happen. So, you look at anecdotal evidence from tribes that have literally said that they have traded with these things for centuries, that they respect them, that they live in the woods, that they have lived in community with these creatures. So do you subtract that, or do you add that to the data collection? When you have primatologists who are literally going, well, I don't know, but man, these tracks, 80% of them are fake. But the 20 to 15% that aren't are remarkable, we've got to study them.
It's called having an open mind.
Yeah.
And that's well, I hate to use this term, but that seems to be one of the dogmas of science.
It is
that it's in their mission statement.
We're right.
To have an open mind. But in reality,
try to challenge it. Try to challenge that open mind.
If we were to have Einstein here, and Gregor Mendel, and Alfred Wegener, and Galileo, and Copernicus, they were all pseudoscience
at one point.
Yep.
I mean, even to this day, we are still proving Einstein. Still.
Yeah.
And half of his equation is still questionable. We still don't know for certain. It's not a law yet.
Yeah,
it's
in the theory
It's still
stage.
a theory.
Yep.
It's still a working theory.
Yep.
E equals MC squared.
Yep.
Now,
Yep.
look at everything that has come and been built off that theory. Atomic bombs, atomic energy. All of this has been built off of E equals MC squared.
And
it is still a working theory.
And there's a point that circles back to the beginning of our conversation about hunter-gatherers and have we progressed enough? Is it hardwired into our nature?
Yeah.
When you just talked about some of the Einstein creations and the attributions and developments of it, you just mentioned all weapons of war.
Oddly enough,
you know, is that
it's where we apply? It's where we apply it first,
right? Is that a constraint to us to prevent us from developing what I call our human condition to the point of where we can begin? We can establish a cosmic consciousness. We can rediscover our holistic tendencies, our holistic, if you want to call it way of life or whatever. But
when we can start focusing our brain on the serotonin instead of the cortisol, on the happiness instead of the fear, you know, and that's a big part of this dissemination of information. Is we have to get out of a fear-based mentality ourselves personally. We have to not be afraid that what somebody believes will crush or destroy our paradigm. It will only add to our paradigm. It will only polish another facet of the gem that is the beauty of humanity and your own life and your own spectrum through which you filter the world. Mm-hmm. You know, so you really do have to be open of mind and be willing to accept everybody prima facie and not want to change things, accept everybody's opinion prima facie, and leave it at that. It is an opinion. It's exactly worth 50 cents. 50 cents will buy you a cup of coffee most anywhere you go.
Yeah.
You know, it's exactly worth that much. It is an opinion. And the point of datum is just that. It is a point of datum of a set of data.
Point.
That's it.
A sample point.
That's it. It does not have to be something that utterly destroys the way you think or believe or anything like that.
Or a life.
Even the Catholic Church has come out and said that belief in aliens, I don't know why you wouldn't. God is an amazing creator. It does not change the faith of the church to say that there are aliens. It does not change the salvation of Christ for people if that is what you believe in. None of that has changed.
Yeah.
By the existence of alien life.
Nor should the viewpoint of one point of a particular argument be. I mean, when you're talking those again, as you said, they're data points, they're sample points.
That's it.
It shouldn't have to be taken away that just because you have a different point, it may be the wrong point. As it turns out, it may be the right point. The thing is, have the open mind. Don't shut your mind to that. The entire universe is how you think, and that's it. And that's where, boy, this last generation.
It's a hard conversation. It's a hard conversation, and it's one of those that intellectually we got to start digging at an angle, Keith. We really do. We as a humanity have managed to, but in the dig and the search for that capital T truth, we have managed to just dig a hole, and we never dug a ramp to get out.
Yeah.
While you're digging, you got to have an escape plan while you're digging, man. And you got to have a way out of that logical trap of fallacy, like what you're talking about, where you literally dig yourself into a point where, like my former employer, where you get to a point where you have to now believe what you've put out there, and if you don't believe that and stand by it, then everything that you stand for crumbles.
Right, yeah.
And now everything that you've led people down a rabbit hole of crumbles. And that's a phallical way of thinking. It is not founded, and it's not something that allows you to grow as a person. It's something that actively stymies you.
Right, and that's how we collectively and individually we need to do a lot of work on acknowledging and understanding another perspective. So in an argument where you have 2, 3, or 4 people, again, they're all data points. You have to have an open mind enough to recognize that, well, that other point might be, that's another option worth considering, to where that might make for a better day in our lives, a better life for us, a better life for everybody involved. It's a matter of respect.
It really is. It really is.
In some ways.
No, not even in some ways. It's a matter of respect. And I make this point on the show all the time. To judge somebody, or even what they're saying, is to have a conversation before you even get to the table, and so oftentimes, on our way to go to dinner with somebody or what have you, we literally have that conversation on the way to the table. Did you have that conversation in your head before you came to the debate tonight? Because if you did, we may not be debating on equal ground here. You may already have shut down and built the wall of like you're saying, little a argument, not capital A. The debate style of argument, where it's a parry and a thrust and a block from both of us. We both, whether we believe the point or not, we have both chosen a point to defend, and we're going to defend it whether we believe it or not. Just like in debate in high school, you go up and you draw a topic out of the hat, and this is what you're defending, whether you believe it or not. And that means that you have to be willing to look at different data points that you might believe or not.
That's exactly.
And we have lost that gentle art in our society of sitting at the Thanksgiving table and be willing to have a talk and leave, and you're all still family.
Yeah.
Like we have literally gotten to a point where families do not get together for Thanksgiving anymore because of what somebody believes politically. And that is so ridiculous to me. I can't fathom it because I am not that person intrinsically, and that's not a judgment on other people. That's just a questioning of humanity on my part, because I don't understand that modality of thinking. Because to me, it immediately builds the wall before you've ever gotten to the table to have dinner.
Yep. The preconceived notions, the jumping to conclusions even before you get involved. I'm one kind of thought process that I'm debating through right now is the state of our society today, in that when a populace's morale seems to nosedive, seems to fall significantly. I'm trying to find out what causes that. Is it a cause and effect between our free fall of morale and our hair trigger reactions to argumentation and whatnot, which is causing people to go out and kill groups of people? Almost, it seems, on a weekly or daily basis.
Because that's the solution. That's the only solution that they can reach for some reason.
Is the free fall of our morale a cause, an effect, or is it a feedback effect? Is it a circular type of a thing?
Frighteningly enough.
It's sad, and I'm going to continue to explore that notion of free fall of morale quite a bit, because I think it does tie into argumentation and like you said, putting up the walls and closing your mind completely. It shouldn't be a scary thing to have an open mind.
No.
And be able to share ideas with somebody. That's what school is all about.
It is. It is.
Isn't it?
It's supposed to be.
That is,
and it used to crack me up, because for a while in my life I taught religion, spirituality to junior high and high school students. And it would crack me up every year at end service, because I would literally take my teacher's book and push it in the middle, like my stack of student books, and be like, no, I need this one. So all I need is the teacher's manual to let me know what we're teaching this week. And teachers would be like, what is going on in your room for an hour and a half every Sunday? Because it just sounds like you're playing around in there. I'm like, Well, maybe it's the fact that, like, I had you as my 7th grade CCE teacher, but we didn't have a whole lot of discussion. We read through the book and we did exercises, and that's what we did every day in school. That's a little boring.
Quite a bit.
So yeah, my classroom was an active parry and thrust discussion. It was, let's talk about what's going on in the world around us and these 3 things that we just heard from Father. And we'll talk about how it relates to your 7th grade life and how you can take this and apply it to your life every week, and in a philosophic way, not even in a religious way, but how this teaches you a moral lesson and what you can do to compass yourself with that in a 7th grade mentality.
Yep.
You know, in that cliquish world that you're living in, that I'm sorry, folks, if you think you got out of it because you're 47 instead of 7th grade, you're wrong. You're still living in a cliquish world. You're still, like we're saying, our humanity drives us the same way that when you look at birds in a parking lot, they're all in the parking lot together, but you very rarely see the sparrows hanging out with the grackles. There's a group of sparrows and a group of grackles, and they're right next to each other. And they'll both react to the same car coming by. They'll both move and then come back, but they rarely mix. And we're so like that as a humanity. It's kind of scary to see exactly how animal our brains are sometimes.
Yeah, and maybe the lack of evolution that we have, even though we have that wild card that is our intelligence.
Absolutely.
And that's we have to keep holding on to that and keep remembering that our intelligence will see us through to it, but we have to apply it. We have to continue to use it.
It is a constant struggle.
Yeah.
Well, thank you so much for your time today. Everybody's just gotten back out. I want to make sure you have a chance to go work your booth, sell your books, things like that.
Okay.
I definitely want to have you on again and again and again, Keith. This has been a fantastic conversation. This is exactly what this show was founded on, is the idea of philosophic conversation about where we are going as a humanity. What are we doing? What are we doing for each other to lift each other up and to keep each other moving forward as a humanity instead of stymieing ourselves and stymieing the conversation? You know, so let everybody know where they can go to pick up the Humaniverse.
Okay, any of the booksellers, Amazon, Barnes & Noble, Apple, Google, they're available as ebooks also. I do have a new book that's at the publisher. They're typesetting it right now. The title is following the Humaniverse Guide theme. The Humaniverse Guide to Will E.T. Talk With Us?
Wow. I definitely want to have you back on to talk about that, because I think that is a huge conversation that we are in right now, especially with all the UAP disclosure, everything else. I'd love to have that conversation with you, Keith.
We've moved way past the if ET exists. It's not even when, it's how, it's what.
Yeah.
And that's my deep dive into my proposal for starting to develop a plan of action for not only global acknowledgement, but global relationships.
That's
we
right.
have, as a species, another fault is we have a tendency to be reactive instead of proactive.
That's right.
This is the biggest learning opportunity we will ever have. My advocacy is that we must start a plan of action now.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And I want to have you on to discuss that.
Cool.
Thank you so much for your time today on a very busy final day of the MUFON Symposium. Stay tuned, folks, for more coverage of the MUFON Symposium 2022 right here from Denver, Colorado with Curious Realm. We'll be right back after these messages.